Okay, remember that they are changing my voice. This video is about what they should teach in school. This video is about subjects for a wise person's schooling. Now, why should they teach these things in school instead of the traditional lowdown? Well, first and foremost, keep an open mind. The people who want to learn the traditional way, who want to go into the sciences, or they want to be a mathematician, perhaps they should have the traditional lowdown. But for the masses of other people, they are far, far better off with my school program than the traditional program. Before we go into the core and important subjects, let's talk about the not so important subjects that I would include. English, within reason. Okay, there wouldn't be that much homework. You wouldn't have that much schooling. School would be several hours shorter. You'd have a lot less homework, maybe half the homework or so. There'd be a lot more videos being watched, right? People would be watching videos in class. Time goes by faster that way. It's a lot more comfortable. I remember when I was in class and I'd see a video come on and be like, yes, we're watching a video. So time's going to go by at a certain rate. Before you know it, the class is up. I'm out of here. Okay, and I would pay attention more. Had nothing to do but to pay attention. The room's dark, you kind of just got to watch the movie. So the not so important subjects, right, with English, math to Algebra 1, all the way through high school, mind you. Okay, at a very slow pace, focusing on what matters most. And in regards to history, there'll be a basic overview. And that's basically it. It would just be English, math, and a basic overview of history. There will be no science. There will be no language. Again, those who want to take those classes, those whose parents hate them enough to insist that they take those classes, hey, be my guest, so to speak. Okay, that would be that part of school. But there are things much more important than these things. You can learn these things on your own time. They're not that important. There are things that are much more important than these things. Of course, you should be able to read. You should be able to write. Obviously. We'll call that covered by English. But the subjects for people to really develop, and they're fuming me because they don't approve of me telling the truth about these things. The subject for people to really develop include these things, right? And these things can be taught in various ways. They can be taught all in one course. They can be taught in different classes, okay? But these are the ideas. First and foremost, because of existential intelligence, naturalist intelligence, intrapersonal and interpersonal intelligence, and logical intelligence, right? Being the most important forms of intelligence. Spatial intelligence, okay? Not artistic intelligence, not math intelligence per se, but logical. They often say logical, mathematical, but it's really logical. You don't have to be so good at math, but you have to be able to do the math in regards to putting things together. Okay? Who is that person? Why are people acting that way? What's going on here? What have you? So these subjects include, first and foremost, the Royal African Falcon Martial Art Order. One of the main places I see that needs to, that is causing problems. One of the main places causing problems that I see is that people don't understand the differences between people. And it all starts with understanding the ideal. The ideal is not Einstein or George Washington or Tesla. Okay, when they don't understand this, they are dumber than hell. Imagine if you thought the ideal person was fucking Pee Wee Herman. Think about it. What happens to a kid that thinks that? There's a thin line between Pee Wee Herman and Einstein and Tesla and George Washington. They just happen to be skilled at certain things. No offense to anybody. This is important that you understand this. So what's the difference between a Royal African Falcon martial artist and another African martial artist, or a Filipino, or a Brazilian, or an Asian, or a Western American, whitewashed martial artist? What are the differences between an MMA fighter and a traditional martial artist? They need to understand these things because martial arts are lifestyles. And only within the boundaries of martial arts can you find the ideal. There's not any evidence to the contrary, not a shred. Mind, body, soul, and spirit. That's the true measure of somebody. Character, mind, body, soul, and spirit. The Royal African Falcon martial arts went beyond all other martial artists before the die was cast. Due to tech, breeding, cheating, and generational ill-gotten gains, no one can surpass them. Egypt was founded by black African martial artists. It's clear-cut. It's in Africa, the depictions of Egyptians, the still of the races, what have you. White people who are racist, racist white people, rather, in the governing class, they use their social club connections in the science departments. These guys are all part of one big club, and they play, left-right paradigm games. Eurocentric science, just look up the history of Eurocentric science. If you don't know that I'm right, you'll see that I'm right. Eugenics never stopped. People never stopped doing eugenics. They never stopped being scientific racists. They never stopped making false narratives for propaganda purposes to try to big up the elite, what have you. And as a result, they cannot ever, ever be trusted with science in regards to Egypt. It's just the bottom line. These people come from hundreds of generations of extreme racists who run society. They didn't hesitate to massacre the Native Americans, and they were racist for hundreds of years at least before that. Hundreds of years. They were racist in Rome. They were racist in Greece. They were too proud to the point where they were racist, and they wanted people to look up to them with their statues, with their art, what have you. Clear-cut, mainstream history. You're an idiot if you don't know that. Clear-cut. So when we look at Egypt and ask ourselves, who triumphed in warfare initially before there was armor, before there was chariots, before warfare changed? It was martial artists. People who worked on their mind, body, soul, and spirit, and not people who were just skilled labor who made weapons in a way that a little kid could now kill somebody who was vastly superior and more wise than he is. They need to understand that. They look at history, they look at anthropology and archaeology, and they just never get it. They don't get it in grade school, junior high, high school, college, graduate school. They never get it at any point. That's what I've seen time and time again. The people who get it more than other people, they don't get it either. It's really just me. Because they don't zoom in on what matters most. Existential intelligence. Why are we here? What's happened so far? What evidence do we have? The main evidence we have is the Royal African Falcon Martial Art Order. We all come from Africa. These particular black Africans in their patriarchal line went beyond everyone else. Horus is not shaped like Hulk Hogan or Kimbo Slice. Because maneuvering, right? Fine motor skills, fine motor movements, fine movements. Okay? Striking surgically. Blocking. Dexterity, coordination, footwork. Mind, body, soul, and spirit. Outsmarting the other tribes, the other warrior tribes, and being the pinnacle of hand-to-hand combat. With transferable skills for archery, blocking arrows, what have you. Pretty straightforward. Blow darts. Pretty straightforward. Faster and master. The Falcon dives at speeds around 242 miles an hour sometimes. 242 miles an hour. It's vision. It's speed. It flies high, close to the sun. They need to understand the significance of these things. And why I'm the top martial artist ever possible. Once you understand that, you start understanding people. You say, oh, it has to do with brain function. Has to do with analytical skills, has to do with wisdom, insight, prioritization, commitment to wise action, has to do with sense, the essential alpha essence to sense why we're here. It has to do with these things. The next thing they need to cover is focused moral intensity. What is moral intensity and what is white supremacy nonsense, token minority nonsense, ethnocentric nonsense? What is actually focused moral intensity? Universal pinpointed moral precision. Why is it not enough to say, there's no such thing? Because the idea is that you're trying your best to be morally precise. And if you truly achieve it to the point where you're in the divine order, then you're in the spirit of universal pinpointed moral precision. If you're trying your best, you believe in it, and you don't know if you've achieved it. Romantic justice, which goes back to the Royal African Falcon Martial Art Order. If you're living as if, Pee Wee Herman or, Donald Trump is ideal, okay, then you're not living romantic justice. If you only date conservatives or Democrats, you're not living romantic justice. If you can't transcend mere white social norms, token minority social norms, Jewish social, you're not living romantic justice. They need to understand why martial arts and the monotheistic martial art principles, why did those beat all the other principles? Buddhism, Hinduism, atheism, okay, the churches, the mosques, the synagogue. Why did monotheistic Royal African Falcon martial art principles beat all these guys in their principles? It has to do with morality and living in reality. Moral intensity, increasing sound judgment. They should know these things. And they should really go over it time and time again so they don't waste their lives. As far as they can after my flesh dies, for example. They're going to waste their life to some degree, but they got to do better than what they're doing, or else they're just a complete waste. Because after I'm gone, there can be no valid moral order. They should understand the failure of modern organized religions. They should understand the failure of colonialism. Too many people go through history class and they start to get it a little bit at first. And then they go right into corporations and they start brainwashing themselves to praise neocolonialists, neocolonists. It's fucking retarded. They need to understand why budget and live a prudent life. Why is money not everything? Why are people more happy when they really appreciate what they have and they live a modest life and they give to the poor and they're treating people fairly than when they hoard money? Why is Cruella de Vil like a character like that? Why is Scrooge McDuck? Why are there real counterparts like that? Okay, they need to understand that. They need to understand the principles of economics, the science of understanding how to deal with scarcity, distribution, use, consumption, management, the principle of rationality. These are the things they need to focus on in moral absolutes. When people don't learn these things in school, they've wasted their lives. And school is taking up a lot of time. You're going to school, you're doing homework, you're doing that instead of learning these things, and people are coming out as dumb sheep. Dumb flag-waving idiots. Typical conservatives, typical Democrats, party line pushers are fucking idiots, and everyone knows it. They'll even be an idiot and calling other people idiots, and they still refuse to stop being an idiot. They don't understand why being a conservative is inferior to having an open mind, insisting on individual rights, and understanding that there should be a war on poverty plan. That rich people do not have the right to say, hey, we worked hard for our money in this very crooked, crony capitalist system where many of them just play golf and ride, they are standing on the shoulders of people doing all the work for them and so on and so on. There's so many reasons. Even a brain surgeon deserves to have a high tax rate because the system has been designed to favor people who think a certain way, who are mere skilled labor. It's been designed to favor Magneto and Lex Luthor and Doctor Doom, and Dick Dastardly and Gargamel. It's not been designed to elevate people who would really bring society into a moral and worthwhile future. And they've exploited the poor. That's a fact. It's just not just Marxist theory or something. I'm not a communist, not a Marxist. That's a fact. The system is corrupt. That's a fact. People are supposed to vote on what tax rate to set for the rich. The rich aren't supposed to say, well, just don't tax me at all. You can't tell me what to do with my money. Or just make it 20%. No. 20% isn't fair. 30% isn't fair. Upwards of 70% in some cases is more than fair. They need to understand why that is. They need to understand why to put being moral above saving your family's lives. Because when they don't understand these things, we get this piece of shit world we have, where even in the richest country in the world, 60,000 people die every year without adequate access to health care. 9 million people starve to death in the world every year, 3 million of them are children. And of course, they also die of hunger-related issues. And the domino effect of that, the crime, the rape, the drugging, on and on and on. They need to understand how we got into this mess, and they need to be ready to die, ready to risk their families to resist. Say, for example, military families. We'll wrap this up after this. I don't agree with the system. I don't think joining the military is a good thing. I think first we need to correct this system to make it worthwhile to join the military. But for the time being, yeah, you need some kind of military, right? But there are families out there that are military families. Their dad is in the military. Maybe they have a son and a daughter that are in the military as well. So these people are willing to risk their families' lives for a corrupt country. But the average person isn't willing to risk their families' lives to be moral? It's pathetic.